my peoples. Did a video yesterday about just a little bit of information about white supremacy, what have you. There is, I was watching some of the media outlets. I normally don't watch your traditional or your mainstream media, you know, so like your CNNs, your MSNBC, Fox News. I do watch those things, but I don't watch them to get information on like how real current events, especially worldwide events. Like, you don't really get a good picture of what's going on in the world by viewing those particular media outlets. So I would typically watch them just to feel like what the pulse is, like what type of information they're trying to get, the media is trying to get across. And don't get it confused. People talk about this fake news, and actually that's a good topic. We'll talk about fake news today. They talk about fake news. There's really all news in the media is pretty much in the corporate media, I should say, is pretty much fake, which means it's engineered. They put out viewpoints. A lot of the times it's opinion based. It's not based on fact, especially when it comes to Fox News. These are all, if you hear them, they don't refer to themselves as journalists. They refer to themselves as commentators. You know what I mean? So you can put them in the same categories like a shock jock, you know, like radio personalities, things like that. They're not real journalists. And they've said this in court because they were sued. I forgot what the circumstances were surrounding the reason why they were being sued, but they said in their defense that they weren't a news outlet, they were entertainment. So just with that statement, that should let you know where they're coming from. You know what I'm saying, as far as the accuracy of their reporting. And you can see if you put like other news that are a little better about this, like sometimes CNN, sometimes MSNBC. If you put them together to report on things, Fox would definitely put a different spin on what's going on. But don't get me wrong, don't think that there's no information to be had from any of these outlets. There definitely is. You can see what the particular tide that how they want to present certain information. Going back to white supremacy, I was watching CNN today, and you really have to. Well, I can't stress more to people, if you haven't taken a course on critical thinking, please take a course on critical thinking, because that will, especially you find one that's recommended in your local JC, because that will really open your eyes to how words are used. They say certain words to try to, or phrases or statements to try to get you to think a certain way about things. So I was listening to CNN, and they were talking about white supremacy, and they were talking about it's passed down from generations. Now when they say that, that's going to instantly make you think of racism or like Klan, those type of organizations. But white supremacy itself doesn't necessarily mean that it's a Klan organization or something like that. They don't necessarily equivalent. They're false equivalents. So they're not the same. the Klan is a cog in the machine of white supremacy, but it's not to be associated direct. It's not the same thing. Now, when you talk about white supremacy, you're talking about a system, like systems set up to oppress, for the most part, and to uplift a certain, to uplift white people over others. And I talked to this a little bit in the last video. You guys could take a look at it, but the recap, pretty much what I said was that the system of white supremacy was actually implemented to protect the elites. So with that in mind, you can see that there's always carrots being given out. So going down through history, there were government programs, there were land grants, like families were given, white families were given land. A lot of the times they're given low interest or no interest loans to buy homes and things like that. These things were never extended to people of color. In fact, when blacks or others attempted to get loans in just a regular bank loan for, say, to start a business or to get a home or things like that, a lot of the times they were denied, not based on whether or not they can afford to repay it, but mainly just as a general policy of the financial institution. So these are the types of things when you'll hear me speak about white supremacy. Those are the types of practices that I speak about. I don't always make reference to the Klan when I talk about white supremacy, but that's the type of, when you say fake news or news being manipulated, that's the type of thing that happens. They always want you to think of the Klan when they think of white supremacy. They don't want you to think of a system that's in place that has a lot of different moving parts working towards the same thing, and that's oppression. I mean, if you look at capitalism as a system, the system was based on oppression, so it makes perfect sense that the system of white supremacy goes hand in hand with capitalism. So you'll see a lot of economic oppression of people of color is one of the main ways that oppression is being dealt out. So you'll see like oppressive, mainly poor people are especially vulnerable to this. So you'll see, and it's both black and white, but they put the black face on it in order to make it more socially acceptable. So say it's a policy concerning Social Security or welfare, food stamps, government assistance, things like that. A few years back, they were talking about entitlements, austerity, things like that. They put a black face on those things, even though it's a policy that is gonna affect all poor people or lower income earners across the board, black and white. So the people, like the white nationalists and these particular groups should definitely open their eyes to what they actually believe and who they actually believe are committing these or who's behind their so-called struggle, and definitely who's behind their oppression, because they're definitely being oppressed financially and mentally. So they need to look at who's behind their oppression, because they're trying to reflect that or deflect that onto poor and minority populations. And a lot of the things that they're fighting for to get pushed through, welfare reform, and things for poor, healthcare, the Affordable Care Act, which helps poor people afford some type of healthcare. The healthcare isn't perfect, but I mean it gives them something. The people that are fighting against, they send these white nationalists and things out to try to derail these things. They call them Obamacare. Once again, we go back to these words. There's no such thing as Obamacare. The actual program is called the Affordable Care Act. For people that didn't know, they always think it's called Obamacare. It's not. It's called the Affordable Care Act, and they put that name onto the Affordable Care Act, or they call it that, so people can turn against it automatically. People that may have white nationalist designs or thinking, they hear Obama and they automatically say that they don't want that, even though that they may be cutting their own throat or pulling the rug out from themselves by supporting the repeal or replacement of that program as well as others. So they should, in fact, focus on who wants them to fight against it, or why should they be fighting against things that are in their own interest. Because prior to, like, a lot of people don't understand this, but prior to the 60s, when the civil rights acts and things were being implemented, there was no problem with welfare, public housing assistance, things like that, prior to the 60s, when the Civil Rights Act, or the Civil Rights struggle was going on. There wasn't this big push to reform welfare or any of these things, and whites generally benefited from these. Black people were denied for a wide range of public assistance, housing, Medicaid or the Medicare, or whatever they called it back then, their healthcare system. Welfare was not available to blacks. A lot of blacks were really poor. Like, there's a lot of really poor people. Even it was going to school with no shoes on their feet. There was a lot of poor people, because those type of programs didn't apply to them. Now, when I'm getting a little bit off subject. Now, when the civil rights legislation and stuff like that passed through, when they made it illegal to discriminate on those terms, then you start seeing a pushback, which is nothing but the elites hated government assistance for a long time. Like, a lot of these white supremacist groups are low-level, poor people that are fighting against these type of economic policies. These are actually ideas of the elite that are trickled down or inseminated down to the lower masses or minions to do the footwork. I mean, because there's only a few people that are making these types of decisions, and in order to get these things pushed through, they need the help of the masses. So they definitely put these little seeds. They send these seeds out. You don't want to be paying for black people's health care. You don't want to. black people are lazy, so they're on public assistance. They're using your tax dollars to go buy Cadillacs and SUVs and all this type of nonsense. All kinds of things like everybody on public assistance is. You have corruption on all levels of everything. And this United States is based on corruption. So I'm not saying that people aren't doing that, but the vast majority of people are on public assistance because they need it, and it's not because they want it. Because there are a lot of rules and shit in place, audits and shit like that. They keep you from doing stupid shit with the money, you know what I mean? So, with that being said, these people are put out there for the sole purpose, or not put out there, I shouldn't say, but they're indoctrinated to believe that their taxes are going for whatever situations or whatever they pay for people. And what they're really trying to do here is destroy, like I said in the last video, they're trying to destroy solidarity. So if you walk outside your front door and you look over and you see your neighbor struggling, they don't want you to feel like you have a responsibility to help your neighbor. They want you to hate your neighbor. So they come out and they want you to see your neighbor as being somebody on welfare. They're moochers. They're living off the government. They're soaking up my tax money. Like they're gonna see that money back anyway. You know what I mean? Like they're using your taxes to live off of instead of getting a job. Like they say all this rhetoric. What they're trying to do is destroy solidarity and remove these programs at the same time, so that what you end up with is a society is based on individualism. It's not even sustainable. That's not even a real model. Humans aren't like. If you look down through time, humans are social creatures, so they interact with each other. We wouldn't have society today if it wasn't for people helping each other and interacting with each other. So this idea of individualism, where you can do everything yourself without anybody's help, is a farce. You know what I mean? You can look at it in your own life. Even if you're own your own business or whatever it is, you're nothing without somebody coming to buy your product, or somebody hiring you to do something. You know, like you have an interaction with somebody at some point. You know what I mean? You're not just creating this wealth or whatever you're creating out of thin air. You know, like there's other moving pieces involved in this. This going back to the fake news. The fake news is very real, but the funny thing is, a lot of the times when you hear things coming from these government organizations, not only government but I really hesitate to say this, but because I know that both Democrats and Republicans they're both they're just two sides of the same coin. You know, and there's no real difference besides talking points. They both do the same thing. If you don't believe me, just go look into what they do. They do the same thing when they're in power. They give they work towards corporate tax breaks. The Democrats might be a little less extreme than the Republicans, but they're both moving in the same direction. You know, I mean, one might be moving a little slower than the other, but they're both moving in the same direction. So I just say that because I feel that the Republicans love to generate news, because they're more linked. I think they're a better gauge of what the elites want, because their ideology is linked in structurally to the power elites, to big money. They're attached to the hip, so attached at the hip, so to speak. So when they mention things, you can always, if you go back to what they feel, like repealing the Affordable Care Act, if you start looking back in and start following the money, whenever Republicans talk about anything, you can always follow the money and see why they want to do these. Like, they want to repeal the Affordable Care Act, not because it's anything not because of fundamentally what it stands for, is because they don't want or they're getting pushback from the pharmaceutical companies, because that's taking money. They're not able to raise. They don't like regulation, and when you hear them talking about regulation, whenever a Republican talks about regulation, they're directly talking about things that prohibit them from exploitation, and they want to exploit. That's in there. That's capitalism. They're like pure capitalists. They want to exploit labor, resources. They at the expense of humans. You know, they don't care if they pollute the river that your town is drinking out of. They don't care if their oil wells are leaking into the groundwater. They don't give a shit about that. They just want to be able to make money unencumbered. They don't want anything that's going to inhibit them from making money. So directly related to like the Affordable Care Act, you will see that they're fighting against that because they can't raise the rates. Like prior to the Affordable Care Act, I remember when my premium was increasing by at least 25%. At the worst part, it was increasing like 15, well, I'd say 20 to 25% every quarter. That's not a year. That's a quarter. So you're gonna see like wild healthcare swings. So if they remove the Affordable Care Act, you're gonna see increases that are insane, like insane increases, like to the tune of like 30% quarterly. Like this is quarterly. So you're saying, excuse me. Every 4 months or so, you're going to see a ton of, like your increases are going to go up. You might be changing, you might notice that you're changing healthcare providers like a couple of times a year. Whenever you see like your employer change healthcare providers multiple times during a year, 2-3 times, that's telling you that the shit is getting out of control. You know, like nobody can. They're trying to figure out how to rein in some of these costs on their side. I mean, that's what they fight for, and they don't care about these things because it doesn't touch them. You know, and they're wealthy. They don't care about. They pay cash for healthcare if they need it. You know, and they have zero sympathy or care. They don't care about the regular American, like the everyday citizen. They don't care anything about that. They might say they do, but if you look at their actions are going to speak louder than their words. So you're going to see what they do. It's not anything that they talk about. Now, whenever you hear them, they do speak the truth, but the way that they talk about it is disingenuous. So they do say your taxes are too high. We want to cut your taxes. When they say you, whenever they mention you and something like you're gonna cut your taxes, they're always referring to them. That's not you. That's them. That's the way they direct it to get your support for their actions. I'm gonna have to chop this video up. I can tell right now it's just all over the goddamn place. But that's it. I'm gonna cut it short. I'll cut cut it right there, even though there's a lot of other things I could talk about. But for the sake of time, too much talking, I will cut it short. So please like and subscribe, and subscribe. I will put links for information. I may have to add links later because I know I like sometimes I'll post videos without links, and I say I'm gonna put links in, so I'll put some links in there so you can stay informed. So with that, peace out. I love. Stay safe out there. Talk to you later.